So today we're going to talk about how to heal and thrive after a breakup. We're talking about moving on. I'm really excited to have my coach in the house, Sabrina Rising, who helps me navigate this stuff in my own personal life. So welcome, Sabrina.
Hi, Jonathan. It's nice to be here.
Yeah. So
Thank
oh, you're very welcome. So let's jump into the hot seat. Are there some relationships you never get over?
Yeah, this is a great question. I think the best way to answer this question is to define what we mean by get over. I mean, does it mean forgetting, erasing, the relationship from your memory? Does it mean that you stop suffering or stop missing
Mm,
the person? Does it mean that you stop loving the person? It's really important to define what you mean by get over, because in my experience, if the love is genuine and authentic and there was a real connection there, you never truly get over this person. You just learn to recontextualize your relationship to that experience,
yeah.
and perhaps there's a fondness and an appreciation, gratitude for lessons learned. There's always maybe some memory, but a memory that doesn't trigger suffering, right? So I think
Yeah.
the key is, we're looking at getting over. I think what most people are looking for when they're trying to get over a relationship is, how do I stop hurting as a result of the loss? Or how do I stop suffering? Or, how do I get through the grieving process so
Yeah.
that I'm not in pain about this relationship no longer being in my life anymore, right? So it's the pain that we want to get out of. It's not necessarily forgetting the person or forgetting the experience, because the experience is valuable, right?
Yeah, it's interesting as you're sharing this. I have a couple thoughts I want to add to this. So, when I lost my son Connor, I thought to myself, well, I'm never going to get over this per se. It's not, and there was nothing to get over. It was more like, how do I get through this?
Yeah.
And using just a slight different perspective, how do I get through the pain? How do I get to a place of acceptance and appreciation and gratitude? So I made a conscious choice when it came to grieving. I said, I'm going to grieve with love instead of suffering. I actually said to myself, because I believe suffering almost to some degree is an intentional pain, and I correlate this into relationships, is sometimes people create intentional pain upon themselves by
Mhm.
ruminating the relationship, by revisiting the relationship, by trying to even bargain to get the relationship back. And if you're in a state of charge, like if there is a charge when you think of this person, and I don't mean credit card charge, but there's an energy that
Yeah.
takes you away from your power. I think that's what, at least, and I'm piggybacking on what you're sharing, just in a slightly um, side of the coin. So
Yeah. I think
when
it's
you,
valuable too, also, just to interject. I think
yeah,
there's a big difference between, like, grieving the death of someone, the
yeah,
actual physical death of someone, versus, the loss of a relationship, that where there is a possibility of reconnection,
yes,
you know? Like,
exactly,
what I'm saying? So if this is when someone dies, we
yeah,
have no choice really but to make peace with our relationship, to grieve in a way that, to find places where that grief can go, where that love can be expressed, so it doesn't just
yeah,
stay in grief, right? And we can actually, like, learn to appreciate or connect with the memory of that person, or keep that person alive in some way with some ritual that, allows us to stay connected to that individual. I think
yeah,
in terms of, like, moving on from a, partnership, romantic relationship, or love relationship, even a friendship, perhaps there's friendships that we break up from, that
yeah,
have trouble getting over, when there's a loss of a relationship, we have to look at, okay, the tendency to sort of romanticize what happened, especially once the dust has settled. I think that
yeah,
human beings have a tendency to sort of go back to, like, oh, what could have been, right?
yeah,
And once we were over the anger or whatever it was that precipitated the separation, that's why it's really important not to make emotional decisions, right? When we're choosing, to end something, it's important that we make that choice from a grounded, self-aware, place of just really knowing that, and believing,
yeah.
it's not possible to get our needs met in this situation, so that we can be complete with our decision, and feel resolved with it, because I think that contributes to holding on as well, as, did I make the right choice? Um,
Well, sometimes though, and usually in the case of my audience, it's it hasn't been their choice. In other words, it was the other person's choice, the end of the relationship.
Mhm.
So they find, I believe they find themselves in a space of longing for the person,
Yeah,
bargaining for, to revisit it and that sort of thing. And I do agree. I want to come back to something about death.
sure.
Because I'm guilty of what I'm about to share, and I'm really embarrassed. I'm going to be vulnerable, but there have been times when a relationship ended, and there was this Machiavellian part of me, like, well, it would be so much easier if they were dead. And I know that sounds terrible, but I meant from a rationalization perspective, I could accept
Because
it.
that shuts the door on it for you.
Exactly. It's like
Instead
there's a
of you being
definitive.
willing to shut the door and having the inner strength and discipline to keep that door closed on your own, right? It's like,
Oh man, I hate that.
yeah, but this is truth, it's like, I mean, you can hate it and it doesn't make it any less true. It's the fact is that, if, for example, the possibility of reconnecting with that person is a complete no, the door is
Yeah.
shut fully, then, you don't really have to do any work to maintain that boundary. Right. It's been sort of been done for you. Right? I think it's really important and it creates a lot of personal growth and
Okay.
resilience and character and wisdom to be able to be in the awareness of what that relationship was, what it represented, not be in bitterness or resentment over what the experience was, especially if especially if you're the one that's being broken up with, as you
Yeah.
say, in terms of your audience. If someone has hurt me or I lost the relationship that I didn't want to let go of, I that doesn't mean that that still gives me the opportunity to sit with the lesson, right? That and sit with the learning and sit with the what did this bring up for me, right? Whether we are broken up with or we are doing the breaking up, it's still loss,
Yeah.
right? So, and there's still so much value in just evaluating that loss and everything that it brings up for us.
So, well, interesting you bring this up. So, coming back to transparency, because you and I have processed the end of my relationship, my most significant recent relationship.
Mhm.
Um, One of the things I gained so much value working with you, and by the way, anyone, I'll post a link below to how you can connect with Sabrina in the show notes. So, if you want to connect with her after this video, um, was really understanding that this relationship was a gift for me on so many different levels. I think
Yeah.
being introspective, and I always ask my clients these four questions, and I ask these four of myself. What positive things did I learn about myself in this relationship? How have I healed from this relationship? What was good about the relationship, like the good parts, the facts, the good facts. And then most importantly, what am I most grateful for? And I can honestly say that while, I'm saddened that it ended, and I recognize that it needed to end. Like,
Good.
that's the other piece.
Mhm.
I'm like, you know what? Because if two people aren't fully all in, then just because one person's all in and one person isn't, then it's not right for you either. Like,
Exactly. That it doesn't matter who does the breaking up, right?
yeah,
Like, you see, when you look at it from like a sort of a universal perspective, like if it's not in flow, if one person is not all in, then there's a lack of integrity in the relationship anyway, and it's really just not meant to be, right? It's you don't no one nobody wants to be with someone who isn't fully in anyways, right? We all are worthy of someone who is fully invested in the
yeah.
relationship and who sees our value and is, engaged in building something with us, right? Yeah.
So I was in a relationship, I guess, well, it started 11 years, let's see, well, I guess 12 years ago now. Gosh, how time flies. And our first of many breakups happened in our third year.
Yeah.
And it wasn't my choice. And I'm arguing for the relationship, and I'm telling her how wrong she is and how you're never gonna find a guy like me. And I'm
Yeah,
and
yeah,
what I
sure.
realized, and I thought, I
How
love
did that
this
work
woman.
out?
What's that?
How did that work out, all that bargaining and
Well, we got back together two more times over the course of 6 years. But what I realized was what I perceived as love wasn't
Mhm.
really love. I mean, yes, there was deep care for one another. There was, there is to some degree love there. More importantly, all of that anxiety, all of that anguish, all of that energy was just attachment.
Good. Good.
And at the
So glad
time
you
I
said
didn't know that. I was more in my ego and thought it was love, and I
I'm
argued with
so
this.
glad you said this. I'm so glad you
Yeah.
said this. This might be a completely different conversation than the one you intended for today.
Yeah.
But maybe we can just talk for a brief few minutes
Yeah, I wanna
about
talk about this, and I wanna go into rituals and readiness,
we
okay?
will. Okay, we will.
Okay.
Thank you for giving me some structure. So so, it's love is not possible as long as we are living in a fear-based consciousness. Real,
Okay.
true love is not possible. Okay. Fear-based consciousness is the ego, right? Like, I don't want to be alone. What happens if I'm alone? Like I need to have somebody. I need to be with somebody. I'm not complete without somebody. Like when we're living in the fear-based consciousness, however that fear shows up in your life, love is not possible. What's possible, what happens in that consciousness, what emerges from there is attachment, lust,
Mhm.
desire, codependency. We say trauma bonding, in psychological parlance. Like these kind of bonds are formed, and they're not really rooted in love. They're rooted in avoiding being afraid, avoiding whatever it is that
Yeah.
we're afraid of, which is not the same as love. When we evolve spiritually, or even just through personal development work, or you know healing practices, working through our fears, and especially our early childhood trauma stuff, we move into a more embodiment of love. We're loving ourselves more,
Mhm.
and therefore we're able to sort of amplify this love, in the presence of someone else who also embodies love, and that's different, right? And that love doesn't feel like, in some of those relationship experiences where you just like can't live without that person, or
You
you're just
complete me.
obsessing over them, and like you send a text message and it throws off your entire day, or you're waiting for you're checking your phone every 3 seconds, like those type of like intense dynamics are really rooted in some kind of fear, based in usually unresolved
Yeah.
early childhood trauma.
So, and I'm just being honest with everyone. I'm guilty of this. I'm guilty of like, oh, I didn't get a text message back. I
Yeah,
recognize though where I was maybe a decade and a half ago, or a decade ago, or 5 years ago, or even 5 minutes ago. I,
yeah,
I keep evolving, and it's because of both the work I do, professionally, and being of support and of service to others, and then also working with a coach like yourself. And why I'm bringing this up is I believe we all need help and support.
yeah.
And so I want to lean into something. And by the way, I want to open it up for questions too, because we're doing this live. So, speaking of help and support, I want everyone to know that Sabrina came to my home, I think it was 2 weeks ago, and really quickly, backstory, my relationship ended 3.5 months ago, 4 months ago, and we had lived together. And now all of her belongings, all of her stuff is gone that we didn't agree that would stay with me. So I invited Sabrina over to sage and cleanse and some woo woo kind of stuff. Would you be open to share? I'm open to inviting everyone.
It's
Will you share
woo-woo
with
light.
everyone what we did? Huh? Oh, by the way, we can call it witchcraft too, but it's woo woo stuff. Uh,
I mean, what are these things? They're just rituals, right?
yeah.
Rituals we do them daily as human beings. You take a shower every day to cleanse your body, to hydrate your skin,
Yeah.
to remove impurities. This is the same type of thing, right? It's a ritual that we do. I think saging is a ritual, that has ancient roots, everything from Roman history to the Greek history to it, all the way back to the Egyptians. It's a ritual that is used for cleansing and removing
Yeah.
impurities. And just cleaning out the space, clearing out the energy of the space. And when you're
Yeah.
sharing space, I mean, everything is energy, as we've talked about before.
Yeah.
And so when you're sharing space with another human, a lot of that dynamic has energy, and there's
Yeah.
memories associated with certain things in the space that you've shared, and there's energy of that person, and energy of certain conversations that happened, or memories that you might have. And so I think the ritual in and of itself, like you can burn sage and not feel any different, right? But
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
the point is that you're creating an intention around that, which is, and it's the intention behind a ritual that really makes the difference. And the intention
Mm,
is really to clear out any lingering memories, to purify, any type of anything in the space that might bring up some sadness or some chagrin over what took place, or
yeah.
things that are keeping you stuck in that pattern of thinking. And so the saging is really just for you to feel like you've cleansed and purified yourself, and you've made the space ready for a new energy to come in.
Yeah.
It's no different than decluttering your closet, or taking
Oh,
out
by
old.
the way, now, folks, I have a walk-in closet fully,
Yeah.
mostly empty. There's some sleeping bags in there. In fact, by the way, I just shared with Sabrina, I have a little camping trip planned, and I bought a sleeping bag. But what I did was, instead of buying one sleeping bag, I bought two sleeping bags. In other words,
Great.
holding space that someone else could come in my life. And
Mhm.
and to the extent that that's not a ritual per se, it's coming back to what you're talking about with the cleansing and such. It's the mindset of holding space that someone new can come in my life. And
Mhm.
so having this closet that's fully empty for someone that can hang their clothes, or having a dresser that's empty for them to put
Yeah.
their clothes in, or buying an extra sleeping bag, if you will. So you can,
Mhm.
not that I'm a camper, but I just happen to be going on a day trip. Um, these are all, I don't know if that would be called a ritual, but in the same context, it's preparing oneself to invite in that new energy into your life.
Yeah, I think that's just an intention.
Yeah.
I mean, in this work, you're in the work that you do with me, in the work that you're doing just to get through your grief and, your personal development work in general. It's all about living intentionally. Right. And so we want to be intentional about where we put our energy, intentional about what we're creating, intentional about what we're calling in. And, I think doing rituals and putting certain structures in place or engaging in certain practices helps us cultivate this energy, because keep in mind, we're only aware of what we're doing, thinking, saying, and acting 10% of the time, right? The 90% of what we're creating and manifesting comes from the subconscious mind, right? So
Yeah.
the more things we can put in place, like whether it's a vision board or, any kind of visual aid
I
or.
was just about to bring up vision board. We need to do, and by the way, for the record, I may have told you this, I may not have. I had done a vision board the year before I met Marie, and there
Yeah,
was a picture of Marie Osmond on the vision board.
amazing.
So
Yeah.
I didn't call in Marie Osmond, but I called in the name.
I think I mean, listen, they work. And the reason they work is
Yeah.
not because of the images themselves, you don't need the right picture. Some
Yeah.
people get stuck on that. It's the images are there to stir up emotions. So it's the
Mm,
emotions that do the manifesting. Just like in affirmations, we say words that feel good. It's not the
mm,
words themselves that we're creating, but it's the feelings that conjure up, that those words conjure up, those positive emotions that create the momentum in our lives, that keep us in joy and possibility and excitement. And that opens up the realm of infinite possibilities. And then we can start attracting things that we want. You might find that you manifest something that is, very similar to what's on your vision board, because you've been looking at that picture. So there's an imprint there, but it's more about creating the joy and the
mm.
excitement and the feel good energies that are stirred up when you look at those pictures. That's a visual
Yeah.
aid, just like an affirmation is a visual aid. These are attractor patterns. Just like, putting on sacred music or music that's very upbeat that makes you happy, is a way to bring in more joy, to call in more joy. In our rituals, like sage has a certain smell, right? And that smell can bring up, can change a vibration that you're holding, right? It can open up your heart. Certain instances can do that, or, essential oils, right?
So we have a couple questions I'm going to post in a second, but I want to share with everyone one thing I do is most mornings or most days I take a walk along the beach, so I get some nature walking in for about an hour, and I put on ceremonial ayahuasca type music because I just happen to like the
Right,
playlist.
it makes you feel good, right?
Yeah, it
That's
makes me feel good. And I daydream of what this will look like from the moment our first email to each other or connection to each other and the progression of the first meeting. Like I have a little daydream that kind of plays in my head. I change it up all the time. The point is, I'm always smiling when I'm thinking of this.
good.
I'm in this happy energy of attracting in. And while I did publicly announce that I did join the dating apps, and I'm merely here to say, because we're going to talk about readiness in a moment, I look at any spoke in the wheel to connect with someone. The more opportunities you can connect with people, whether it's real life, whether it's virtually, whether it's through friends or whatnot, create as many portals to be able to connect with people,
Yeah.
and we have this medium that's, electronic. And so while I'm not saying it's the end all be all, and it certainly has its faults to it, it's just energy. So,
Yeah.
Sabrina, we have a question from Jane. If I date a widower and go home and see pictures of past wife and her stuff, is that a sign to run?
It's not, I don't know if it's a sign to run. It's definitely an opportunity for a conversation about how whether or not that person, it feels complete with that relationship, and if they've really made the space in their lives for someone new, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, I think that this is something that happens, in so many instances, where you start dating someone and you realize that they have pictures of themselves and their past partner is still alive and publicly viewable, or, in their homes and so on. And, sometimes that's important to make sure that you're engaging with someone who's fully ready to receive you, who's done the work, who's prepared the space for you, and who is open to creating new memories with a new person.
Yeah.
So that's really, really important. We all have a past. Everybody's had past relationships, and you
Yeah.
know, I think, grieving, which is, I think, something we're talking about today, is a really important ritual. It's a very important part of the renewal process. We look at it, grieving isn't necessarily something that is like, should be feared or dreaded. Like,
Mhm.
oh, I have to grieve all this, or grief is so hard. Grief is a sacred ritual. It's a practice that we allow ourselves to go through in order to really cleanse and prepare, for the next phase of our lives, whether it's a phase of being single or a phase of, starting a new. We can grieve anything: the loss
Yeah.
of a business, the loss of income, the loss of a partner. And so being able to really grieve and process that loss and feel complete with it allows us to gain clarity, to open our hearts, to prepare the space for something new.
Yeah, and to the extent that, and again, I'm not going to make the comparison with the child loss, but certainly the loss of a spouse.
Mhm.
Um, if someone is deeply holding on to the
Yeah.
pain and holding on to the desire that they wish even the circumstances were different, then they're probably not in a place to, be open to loving someone new. At the same time, I think the fact that when we love someone, the love doesn't have to die per se. It doesn't have to be shoved in a closet and the pictures be put in the attic kind of thing, because I have pictures of my son all over the place. I got one right behind me. Um,
Mhm.
I think it's just, but I also do believe if there's a charge, there's an attachment to
Yeah.
those photographs, and there isn't a space to open it up for someone new,
Mhm.
then it probably isn't the right time in that particular case. So, Jane, I think Sabrina did a great job in responding, and I hope you found value in what we shared. We've got Beach Lover who's in the house, and she says, if an ex left in a violent manner, how do you clear that? I find the negative energy lingering, and it's been a year, Sabrina. What can I do? What can I do?
Okay, so part of why the negative energy is still lingering is because a beach lover, whatever your name
Yeah.
is still holding the interpretation that the exit was violent, right? So I think
Mm,
part of that is you healing yourself, healing, doing the work that needs to be done in order to move into a place of acceptance and recover from whatever traumatic imprint that violent exit left on you.
yeah.
And once you've done that healing work and you've been able to sort of let it go and find peace with yourself over what happened, and maybe even forgiveness for him, at some point when that becomes appropriate and accessible, without bypassing anything, then of course there are things you can do to clear your space. As we said, there are rituals you can engage in. And here's the thing, and I meant to say this when we are talking about the
Yeah.
saging. no amount of saging is going to clear anything unless you're ready to let go. Right? You have to be really ready to let go. You have to be in acceptance. You have to get to the place where, Jonathan, you got to with your relationship with Marie, where you realized that it was for the best, right? You realized
Yeah.
that this was something that you didn't want to be in anymore because it wasn't meeting your needs, right? And so once we get to that place of acceptance, and that is an inside job, we can only do that internally. Like, this is
Yeah.
what happened, then we can engage in rituals and practices that help really anchor our acceptance and remind us that we did make the right choice, or that the relationship ended because it was for the best. And now we start, that negative energy, as you say, starts to really clear out because
Yeah.
you've cleared it out from your heart first and foremost.
I've observed that when, and to the extent that beach liver, this might, if this creates any charge, it's not my intent. I believe when you can say that the relationship merely ended, the fact that you had to add the word violent in there, when a person can come to a place and say, you know what, wasn't the right relationship, it
Yeah.
ended. I
Mhm.
think that's when a person is ready. And I share this with everybody right now because I'm going to go down a rabbit hole real quickly, Sabrina.
Mhm.
Um, you know, during my singlehood, and I guess I'm technically back in singlehood again, but let me reframe that. In my previous dating experiences, I can't begin to tell you how many times I've spoken to women, and I know this equally happens for women when they speak to men, talking about their past relationships. And they've been, they were with a narcissist, they were with this user, they were the blah, blah, blah. In other words, all of this negative charge
Yeah.
when sharing the past experience. And I have learned now that to me isn't a red flag. That's a deal breaker, because to me, when someone has a charge over their past relationship and they're describing it from a place of what's the word I'm thinking of, acting as if they're one step back from it all, but they're not really, because if you feel a charge when you're describing it, and if
Mhm.
you have to describe it in such a way that even puts all the blame or most of the blame on the other person, then that person is not moved on from it. They haven't healed. At least that's my perception.
Yeah, I
I'd
agree
love
with
your perspective on that.
Yeah, I agree with the healing process. I mean, essentially that's the essence of what I share too. In order to really let go of negative energy, we have to be willing to let it go within ourselves. We have to do the healing work,
Yeah.
to own our part, to see how we played a part, to take responsibility for our part, to take responsibility for our own state change, moving out of fear and anger and resentment and bitterness and into acceptance and inner peace and ultimately love.
Yeah.
I think, just to be clear, I also don't want to step over in case, beach lover or whoever's listening
Yeah.
is having an experience of someone who's actually physically violent, right? So if
Oh,
there is,
yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh,
if there is someone who is like, my sense when she asked the question is that, maybe he I don't know, caused
yelled.
physical damage or,
Oh,
I don't know, like maybe there was if there is a threat of danger, like an actual physical threat of danger, there's a real traumatic experience as a result of that, traumatic response as a result
yeah.
of that. It's really important, again, that you seek the help that you need to be able to recover fully, to make sure you can feel safe again
Yeah.
in your space, to make sure that you can feel supported in your process and feel safe in your body and feel safe in your house and safe even engaging with other people. So doing the work that will help you get there is essential.
I like the way Dr. Pat Allen says it. If you have to call a doctor, a
Yeah.
policeman, or an attorney,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah, I mean, those are
and,
the things that we really need to look at and make sure that we're
yeah.
dealing with within ourselves, and then,
And I don't want to, by the way, I want to be clear, because if I even remotely suggested that there isn't, like if you're truly a victim to needing one of those three people in your life, the doctor, policeman, or attorney, then obviously go seek that help. I was merely talking about it from the place of there's a charge emotionally, that negative energy charge that's misplaced on the other person. That's usually a sign for me that that person hasn't healed much. So we have another question that came in. Angela says, and I thought you think you might find this interesting, Sabrina. Jonathan, wouldn't you say you are manifesting with intention? Well, Sabrina knows I have an app on my phone, folks. There's an app on my phone called Think Up.
Of course.
Sabrina turned me on to it. It looks like this, called Think Up. And
Yeah.
I have a series of affirmations that are recorded in my own voice. I
Good.
am worthy of a life partner that meets my needs.
Yeah, you sure are.
Um, let's see. I have more. I have a lot of business one too. I am creating a high quality relationship with a conscious, loving partner who wants to do the same things I do. I'm in a loving, passionate, and playful romantic relationship. Um, let's talk about manifestation for a moment as part
Yeah,
of the way
first of
we
all,
grow
you
up.
can't manifest without intention. I mean, we're first of all, we're meant let me just reframe that. As humans, we are always manifesting, whether
Yeah.
we are doing it intentionally or not. Okay.
Hmm.
So we're always attracting to us things that are like us, things that are a match for our vibrational, frequency, whatever it is that whatever energy we're holding in our bodies. If I'm spending most of my time in grief, I'm attracting experiences that will bring more grief. If I'm spending most of my time in joy and happiness, I will attract experiences that bring more joy and happiness. This is just the way it works from a universal, law, metaphysical perspective.
Yeah.
And so when what makes, living intentionally powerful is that now we're actually putting thought and energy and visualization and other techniques into really, focusing on what it is we want in our
Hmm.
lives. Right. And so manifesting with intention, creating, living intentionally, putting our attention on where we want energy to flow is how we can accelerate,
Yeah.
bringing things that we want into our lives. And the reason the app is powerful is because, as you know, from working with me, that,
Yeah.
90% of your life is created by your subconscious mind. And
Yeah.
how do you reach the subconscious? The subconscious mind is most easily programmed when it's in what's called theta wave brain state, which can be easily likened to a state of hypnosis. For those of you that don't know, and theta is a state that we go into naturally just before we drift off to sleep. So at night,
Yeah.
before you go to bed, you pop your headphones in, you listen to some subliminal programming, and that gets your subconscious mind in alignment with what you consciously desire to create, in your waking life. When 90% of your subconscious mind is working with 10% of your conscious mind and they're supporting each other, now we have a
Yeah.
state of flow and life becomes effortless, right? So that's
Yeah.
my spiel on
Uh,
manifesting and getting the subconscious mind in alignment with what you consciously desire.
by the way, really quickly, it looks like my younger brother is in the house.
Oh my
Uh,
goodness. Hi,
I
Ken.
didn't. So Ken, yeah, Kenon is actually his birth name. So he just says, "Thank you so much for this live chat. Really great from both of you. Great questions as well. Loss is real, and this chat has helped me. And I'm a big fan of Sage." Kenon, I had no clue that you knew what Sage was. So when I see you on Friday, we're going to talk about that.
It's amazing.
Really quickly, there was a couple other things I missed earlier. I wanted to share with you. With respects to Beach Lover, she said, I forgave him, perhaps not myself yet.
There you go.
So I just
You're
want
always
to,
the one
yeah.
that's on the hook. We are always the ones that are in the way of our own, getting what it is that we want in life.
So Jody P wrote a few minutes back. She said, "Do you feel a magnetic pull towards Marie, Jonathan, or did you have reservations? I'm interested in the energetic dynamic you were in."
Mhm.
So, well, I want to answer that in a couple different ways. On some level, I think I was aware that I think I knew this very early on. We were misaligned, but at the same time, and this wasn't from a place of lust or limerence. I really do feel as though my intuition knew there was a journey I was meant to go on with her. There was a learning experience. There was a gift in this relationship, and I'm so grateful that we did. I do believe that when you, for lack of a better word, surrender to all in, it's kind of recognizing that, there's no such thing as a perfectly aligned person, right? I mean, ideally you want to find someone as close as possible, but in this particular case, there were some differences. I don't feel, I don't want to say that I don't miss her, but that doesn't feel like the right words. I have a care for her. And my little kid, on some level, the ego might want her back. That's that little kid inside of me that wants to go back to an old patterning that is something that I've worked really a lot with Sabrina to heal some of
Yep.
those wounds within myself. But I don't feel a strong charge. Like, I don't feel this need to speak to her on the phone and want to get back together. I don't have any of that charge other
Mhm.
than this is a person whom I really like. And I miss some of that daily activity. At the same time, I recognize that if I was holding so much space for somebody else, which so many of my clients do, they will not make space for someone new in their life. I'm a firm believer that we make space for someone new, and that's by letting go or moving through or moving on with the past relationship.
I also, if I can just also
Sure.
add to what you're saying, in terms of the energetic dynamic, there's really only two dynamics available. There's either attraction or repulsion. Right?
Okay.
So we're either attracted to someone or repulsed by them. Like, this is what energy does, right? We either
Okay.
want to lean in, or we sort of are put off by something. You know what I mean? And whether or not we want to make that attraction turn it into something romantic or physical, or that kind of thing, then there's an even stronger charge there. And those dynamics are usually created by a variety of things. It could be karma. It could be like, this is someone that I have something unresolved with, that I'm here to complete something with. And, we don't have to go into that conversation, but that's, in my experience, a real thing. It can be that it most often is always the case where there is, a major lesson to learn in
Yeah.
that dynamic that's going to serve you in the evolution of your journey here as a human, right? Like, we are, and I guess I'll just speak from my own personal experience, and
Yeah.
also having guided so many people over the years. When we are really, really attracted to somebody, like, there's a real strong energetic pull, it is 100% because there is work to do together. We have work to do
Mm,
with each other. There is work to do in this relationship. This relationship is going to trigger me. It's going to push my buttons. It's going to present me with opportunities to grow, to expand, and to evolve and fulfill my potential for love, which is what we're here to do. Relationships are here to help us fulfill our own potential to embody love.
mm,
Not you're here to complete me, I'm here to complete you, and we're going to have this amazing ride together. I mean, those are wonderful ideas and concepts. Again, keep in mind that those are romantic in nature, and
yeah.
romance has very little to do with embodying love, right? As a way of
Mm,
being, a way of operating in the world. And so relationships, as we're drawn to people, we're drawn to the experiences that these dynamics will represent for us, so that we can grow and expand our own potentiality for love, the embodiment of love.
well, okay. So, and we have another question that come in, and I want to bring that up in a second, but not but and well, are all relationships meant to be work and healing? I mean, is it, well, can't there be fun and, lots of
Course.
play and everything else?
Listen, I'm not trying to say like all relationships are like a science experiment, like it's not just always, but we're always learning and growing, and we're learning and growing even in the fun that we have. Of course,
Yeah.
there is fun, and there is enjoyment, and there's pleasure, and there's all those things, because you wouldn't stay in a situation if it was just, constantly having to look at yourself and going through painful awarenesses, it's all of those things.
Yeah. Okay. We have another question in the house from Mel. She says, "Why is it so difficult for us to forgive ourselves?"
This is
By the
challenging.
way, that's the billion-dollar question. No, I know you have an answer.
Well, I love this. I love this question. This is all goes back to childhood. It all goes back to early childhood conditioning and feeling, like I'm either unworthy of love, or I deserve to be punished, or, whatever the messaging that we internalize as children is how we learn to talk to ourselves as adults. And we the what we feel in those early childhood environments, the felt experience, is what we recreate in our adult relationships. And so, if you internalize blame and guilt and shame, and felt like the things that went on in your early childhood environment, for example, if your parents didn't get get along, or if there was a lot of fighting, or, there was a lot of issues growing up, you might have internalized some of that as, this is my fault, or it's because I'm not doing this, or I'm not doing that enough. And so,
Yeah.
over years and years and years of this, like, internal dialogue solidifying, and us, of course, because we believe it, we're creating the evidence of this belief over and over again in our lives. It's
Yeah.
really hard to move on from that. We have to look at deconditioning our beliefs, deconditioning from this way of operating that says, I'm not worthy of forgiveness. I mean, why wouldn't you be? And I would also argue that your forgiveness of others is not genuine if you can't forgive
Yeah.
yourself. It just isn't. It's not authentic. You can't love others if you can't love you. If you can't love yourself, you can't have compassion for other people if you can't have compassion and empathy for yourself. Just like it's really not possible to fully forgive another person without fully forgiving yourself.
Something interesting occurs to me since my brother is in the house.
Mhm.
We have a mother who she would, whenever she got upset with my father, me, or my brother, she would literally be emotionally gone for
Yeah.
probably
Yeah.
3 to 5 days. She would be emotionally gone. And I I am acutely aware how I felt as a child experiencing this. And it was like my mom abandoned me.
Mhm.
And, I was trying to get my mom's, like, it wasn't my fault. Like, it might have been my dad's fault. Certainly, I felt even more uh, acutely aware of it when it was me that triggered my mom to do this. Why I'm bringing this up is I don't believe my brother has the same pattern in relationship that I do, even though we experience the same parent.
Yeah, of course. Listen,
Any thoughts on that?
of course, I've worked with siblings that have come from the same family environment, the exact
Yeah.
same parents, the exact same, upbringing, and they have two completely different versions of their childhood.
Yeah.
It's, our belief system is really influenced by our own inner subjective experience.
Mm,
And so, you're never going to have two people witness something in the same way, because everything's
yeah.
getting filtered through our own ability to interpret, and our own disposition and tendencies and awarenesses. And, there's a million different influences at play that are really not that relevant to explore. What's more relevant is just looking at your own internal makeup and saying,
Yeah.
this was my interpretation of my childhood, and understanding that, what you experienced in that childhood, how,
Yeah.
whatever that interpretation was, we do the subconscious work to understand that, is affecting you in your life today. It's
Yeah.
driving your choices, your behaviors, your patterns. It's what you're attracting in your life, because this is what you're here to heal. Keep in mind, and again, I'm always taking our conversation down the spiritual path. We are, when we're conditioned in early childhood experience, and those developmental years, we spend the rest of our lives undoing that conditioning,
Mm,
because it has nothing to do with the essence of who we are. The way
yeah.
we are conditioned in a fear-based way of living is not in alignment with love.
Mm.
So we spend, that's why the personal development industry is such a, multi-million dollar, billion-dollar
Million
industry.
dollar.
I was gonna say, yeah, that's why I corrected myself, billion-dollar industry, because everyone is trying to just feel better and get into alignment. We all just want to feel more aligned with our natural essence. We're trying to get
Mm,
back to ourselves, right? And we
yeah.
don't know what we've lost, or how we lost it, or when we lost it. We just know that we don't feel good, right? And so it's
Mm,
our job as facilitators to help bring people back into love, into their natural essence, and let go of that early childhood conditioning. And once we've done that, we've taken care of a lot of problems. There's less conversations about how to meet the right guy, what to do to meet the right guy, how to vet the right guy, how to be in the right relationship, how to attract the right person, what platform should I use, what should I do. There's less conversations
yeah.
about what should I do, because we're all focused on how to be right which is right with ourselves.
So, once did an outline of the 4 stages of relationship readiness. And, the first stage is, which I'm going to piggyback on what you shared, and I want to circle back to this, is healing your past, you know, being in a good place with respects to your past relationships, but more importantly, your childhood upbringing and childhood wounds and traumas and adult traumas. And then I say the second phase is learning who you really are and who's really compatible with you. And I talk about discernment. I say the third phase is the law of attraction, and adding to that the what I call flirting skills, because I think most humans aren't really good at flirting, and that's a skill that I think needs to be learned, just like when I was in sales and learned how to be a salesperson. Then lastly, knowing the tools it takes to make a healthy, happy relationship. So I bring this up because this piggybacks on what you've just been talking about, is the importance that for everyone listening, 80-90% of this is all healing from the past.
Mm-hmm.
The techniques, the other little things, dating apps and, emails and text message and all that, that's just a little bit of the techniques. You're doing 80-90% of the work well before you meet someone. You're more apt to attract someone in your life. And I say this because as I reflect now on my own journey, this really decade and a half, I've just done a lot of work. And because of that, I wake up just a bit happier every day. I am no longer in that space of, look at 15, 17 years ago, I went to bed wishing I didn't wake up. Now I get up at 3 a.m. because I can't wait to start the day. And I'm saying that a little tongue in cheek. So, okay, really quickly, Jane, I just had to give a little spiel. Jane is in the house and she says, can attraction move to lust? Cannot attraction move to differ episodes in your life besides lust? Let me think of what I think she's saying. If you're not attracted to someone in the beginning, can that change as you get to know them? I think that, and like to a place of desiring them physically. I think that's where she was going. I could be wrong.
And please correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, I think that's valid. And also, attraction doesn't have to turn into lust. It doesn't have to turn into because I think earlier I said there's only two energetic dynamics, whether attracted or repulsed or repelled.
Okay, got it.
So,
okay.
So it doesn't have to turn into lust. I mean, I think what separates us from animals is discernment, being able to, we're in charge of our faculties. We're aware of attraction when it's present. We're aware of polarity when it's present. And that doesn't mean that we need to act upon it. So it doesn't have to turn into that anything without your consent. I mean, and we're choosing all of it. Ultimately, we can have an energetic response to someone, but ultimately, we get to decide how we want to play that attraction out. Sometimes, we're attracted to people because they're so intelligent, or they just emanate such warmth and beauty and gentleness. We feel healed in their presence, or we feel, comforted or safe in their presence. Right. So sometimes we're just attracted to energy because it feels good. And that doesn't necessarily mean that, as human beings, we have a tendency to want to sexualize things or make them sexual, especially if we find what we're attracted to aesthetically pleasing. And it doesn't have to go to that level. That's just, the ego's tendency to want to, really jump into something, and experience the fullness of it. Right. And so it's important to distinguish that attraction can be present and it can simply be observed as attraction and nothing else.
I'm trying to find a meme. I'm going to apologize. I know the essence of the meme, but I forget the author. I think his name is Dan P. something or other. So please forgive me. I'm not acknowledging you properly. But he said 99% of male problems, 99% of your problem. This is directed towards men. If you can control your stomach, your penis, and your tongue, 99% of your problems will vanish.
I saw that too on Instagram. I saw it too. Oh my God, what's his name?
Dan P. Something like that. I can't remember his name.
I know who you're talking about. Yeah, he's great. I really love his stuff, and it's all stuff that we're talking about. So,
and I'm just recognizing that in my own life, that would be.
Well, and I think that's true for women too. I mean, we also, women are, I think, just as responsible for their own issues, their own experience, relationship issues, or problems, we call them. I call them opportunities for growth and expansion. When we learn to really learn how to control our sexual energy. When we're not leaking it, we're learning how to hold our sexual energy in a way that honors who we are, in a way that commands respect. We're not using it irresponsibly. I think that we also find that we can prevent a lot of, so quote unquote problems
Yeah.
themselves.
Okay, we got another question in the house. Are there ways to help people who don't realize they have a trauma to recognize they need to do some work before they can put any of these practices into play for a good relationship?
Yeah, I mean, I think most people who don't know that they have, stored trauma
Yeah.
on some level, I mean, we may not have a direct connection to it, but on some level in our everyday life, we feel stuck. We feel stuck, we feel blocked, we feel like something's missing, we feel, and so many of us settle into this sort of complacent idea that maybe we might be unlucky, or we just don't have the right skills, or we don't have what it takes, or we just don't have the right whatever opportunities, or we get stuck in that sort of victim consciousness. The fact of the matter is that if you're not living the life that you want, like if your life isn't, if you're not bouncing out of bed joyful and excited to
Yeah.
experience life in the way that you've created it, chances are that you are blocked by something, and that block can be discovered, explored, and transmuted by you if you're willing to do some inner work.
Well, but here's where her question was, and I think this is where she was going with it. Can we help another person recognize
I see.
this? And
Yeah.
and my belief system is, while people in your life, friends, maybe even a relationship, might be able to have some influence, and I really mean it some. Ultimately, the individual themselves has to want to make a shift in their life. They have to want to heal. And sadly, most of the time it happens after a humbling event. I believe that most change happens either it happens, either desire for pleasure or growth is so strong that it drives you to do it, but that's rarely the case. I
Clearly.
oftentimes find it's a deep humbling event, and I know this in my own.
A bottom.
Yeah,
There
yeah,
is usually a bottom,
bottom.
and that's where we find our humility. I mean, this is
Yes.
widely known, especially in the 12-step movement. It's very widely talked about. It's like, why does it take us to get to the point where we lose everything? You know what I mean? It's because that's where we are our most vulnerable. Our most vulnerable is when we hit a bottom, and there's a quote in one of David R. Hawkins' books. It says, "Heaven and hell are a tenth of an inch apart." You know, you get to that place where you've exhausted all avenues, you've exhausted all options, and there's nowhere left to go but inward, and then you become willing to go inward.
Yeah, I know even in my own personal life, experiencing, as I said before, the corporate loss, the market crash and everything, I was at such a low place. I went to bed wishing I didn't wake up. It was in that moment where I was like looking into the abyss and I didn't see my reflection, if you will. I said, holy crap, you know, I'm not ready to give up on this. And I began slowly changing my life. I actually remember I called my father, and that was the first person I called. I was in my mid 40s. I said, Dad, I need help, and he said, I've been waiting for this phone call. Like,
Oh,
he knew, like, he didn't intervene, I mean, he was there when I was ready, but there was nothing he could do. Like, he had this, like, sometimes you have to hit rock bottom
yeah.
in whatever form that looks like. Before someone can make a change. And, I've been blessed ever since then, because I'm a big proponent. It's why I wrote my book, which is right behind me. But I believe in personal development, self-help, spiritual work as a pathway to inner peace.
Mhm.
And I'm a big proponent of working with a coach. So just to remind everyone, I'm going to post a link. If Sabrina's voice resonates with you, I highly recommend checking out her work. I work with her. You've been a real godsend to my life by helping me. I think when we work with a coach, folks, it's an opportunity if a good coach can see your blind spots.
Mhm.
Um, Probably because most blind spots are the same anyway, but they're able to,
Important
they
people
have a
know
way.
it. You
Yeah,
can't do
but
your own root canal, you know? I mean,
yeah,
you can be a wonderful coach and a wonderful seer and a wonderful guide and, you know,
yeah,
facilitator, and we need each other. Everyone needs, like you said, support. I think all the best people, all the most excellent people have coaches or support systems, or, you know, people they can lean into. It's a sign of intelligence and also willingness to improve and develop ourselves when we're seeking, you know, uh, different perspectives and, you know, other ways of doing things, right? And so, like you said, we all have blind spots. And, you know, I think when you embrace your human experience, we're talking today about like how to heal and thrive after a
yeah.
breakup.
And I want to share something really quickly.
Yeah, like I think when you embrace, you know, your experiences and start to recontextualize them and look at them from a different perspective, you know, and you allow even you know, the most painful ones to, you know, to inform your process and inform your choices and your evolution, and, you know, feed into your wisdom and help you develop as a person, you're already thriving, you know, even if you're not like ready to date again, or in, you know, in that place of bringing in someone new, as we're talking about today. But like, you know, I think thriving, using our life experience, any life experience, to help us become better people, stronger people, you know, people with more compassion and more empathy available to us because of what we've been through, you know, and ultimately a grander capacity for love, you know, then we're doing exactly what we need to do to have the best life
Yeah.
possible.
So I want to kind of go down this final rabbit hole, if you will, because I love going down nooks and crannies of things. This is one of the reasons why, folks, I can be all over the map, because I can go down so many different fissures and stuff. So, you know, some people in my YouTube universe and my social media, you know, will argue on my own journey that I'm not ready for a relationship, that you need to go through this and you need to go through that, blah, 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 blah. So I have an interesting awareness. So first off, I was ready for full commitment before I ever met Marie. So I just want everyone to know that. So to me, the idea of going all in and being fully committed is something I've been ready for a long time. And while this particular circumstance didn't work, that readiness exists. But something occurred to me, and maybe it's why it feels a little scary. So, and I wrote this out. I said, something occurs to me, and maybe it's why it feels a little scary to go back out there. I said, superficial conversations lack depth, and deep conversations require vulnerability. And I went on to say, sadly, too few people lack depth, and equally few people have a capacity for vulnerability. And yet, I do believe that many soulmates exist. You know, so being vulnerable again does feel a little scary.
Mhm.
You know, opening myself up to another person, sharing parts of my personality, my fears, my insecurities, being transparent. There is and let me just say this: it isn't like this strong charge of no, I can't be vulnerable, because vulnerability for me is rather easy compared to most people. But I certainly want to be very selective on who I want to be vulnerable with.
Well,
Um,
I think the
what are your
bottom
thoughts
line,
on what I just shared?
yeah, I think the bottom line is and this is for you, and it's for anybody who's considering entering you know, a relationship again, especially after a period of grief and loss and integration, which is so important in between relationships. Um, are you ready to learn about yourself again?
Oh, well, that's easy. Hell yeah.
That's all that's
Really?
happening.
Is that, wait, say that. What was that? What was that again? I have to write this down.
Are
Are
you
you,
ready to learn about yourself again?
wow, ready to,
That's
well, the
all.
reason why I didn't hesitate, because I love learning about myself.
Mhm.
Like,
Well,
well, I
if
mean,
you look at exploring the possible, and that doesn't mean, of course, you know, I want you to have discernment and be, you know, vigilant and, you know, very, uh, honest with yourself about the person that you're sharing yourself with. Of course, we want to make sure that we are engaging. And here's the thing: if you're when we talk about manifesting with intention and embodying love and doing the healing work, if you're in that loving place where you're
Yeah.
centered and grounded in who you are, and you're worthy of love, and you're feeling open-hearted, and having done quite a bit of healing work, you're naturally going to attract people that are already meeting you in that space. Okay. So we only need to be very concerned about what we're attracting when we're really kind of not clear about the energy that we're holding. Does that make sense?
Okay.
So if you're clear about the energy that you're holding, you're doing less time worrying about, is this the right one? Is this the right conversation? Is this the right? Now, when you put yourself obviously in a public platform like a dating app or something like that, you might get all kinds of stuff, but you won't necessarily feel attracted to someone who isn't sharing your frequency. Okay.
Okay.
So there's that to consider. So so we've sort of narrowed it down, and now we have a few, and now you're going to use your intuition to trust yourself and say, okay, this is where I feel, I most resonate with, the person I feel I resonate the most with. You probably have, a handful of questions ready to go based on your experience and what it is.
Oh, that's a no-brainer for me.
So yeah, so you probably, you're a veteran at this, so you have your questions. You're like, do you like this? Do you do this? Is this important to you? Does this matter to you? What are your values? And then once you've decided, like, okay, we click, it could be a first date, it could be, 2 dates later, you realize, okay, there is synergy here, there is alignment here, there is an environment of shared values. The real question now becomes am I really ready to learn about myself again, with this person, right? And so that's really what it is, because that's what relationship is. You're going to learn about you through the eyes and the experiences and the reflections of this other person, and they're going to learn about themselves through your eyes and your experiences and your reflections. And this is what makes the beauty of partnership, is that you're looking in the mirror and you're going, I love what I see. I love you because I love what I see about myself and you. And then there'll be times when you say, I don't like you at all. I can't stand you right now. I don't like what I see about myself through you, right? So, now, and then there's the opportunity for more love, right? For more growth and more expansion and more personal responsibility. And the more we create that transparency and vulnerability with our partners and sharing what we see, what we like, what we don't like, and how we feel in each moment, the more intimacy and connection and trust we create in that partnership. And the more you've created a container that you can grow in. Right. And it becomes mutually beneficial to both parties. And this is what I wish for anybody, who is considering partnership, do it with this perspective, do it with this intention, and relationships will feel a lot less scary and more fun and more exciting.
Well, I just posted it right there. Am I ready to learn about myself again? Well, since I'm a junkie of learning about myself, sometimes at my own detriment, I know that answer is an astounding yes. So
Yeah, there you
coming
go.
back to the idea of readiness, and for everyone, I invite you to ask that question of yourself. Am I really ready to go deeper? Am I ready to learn more about who I am in this dynamic of connecting with someone else? Well, Sabrina, we've gone an hour, which is usually my time frame for doing this. Folks, if you found value in this conversation, you want to connect with Sabrina, there'll be a link below in the show notes as soon as we wrap up. I invite you to check out our website. There's a big healing going on tomorrow, right? A meditation. I'll be on that.
Yeah, we have a free guided practice, 30 minutes tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. Pacific for anybody who wants to join. There is a Facebook event under my name. There's a few co-hosts as well. We will be guiding a 30-minute practice just in response to the unfortunate events that are happening in the world for anyone who's experiencing a lot of grief or anger or resentment, or just you want to be held in a space of compassion and empathy and help alchemize some of those feelings so we can feel more inner peace. Please join us.
Yeah. Well, Sabrina, can I just reach into the camera and give you a big, gigantic Jonathan Bear hug of appreciation?
I'm hugging you back. Thank you so much.
Oh,
Wow.
how'd you do that?
I don't know how I did that.
Wow.
I literally didn't do anything.
Wow, that was so cool. Oh my
Oh my
God, there's
goodness.
like some
Like, talk about witchcraft. I
woo-woo
have no
universe
idea how
helping
that
us out.
happened. I'm literally just sitting here hugging you.
I want to thank everyone that was on live and certainly those watching the recording if you got to this space. Sending you all big, gigantic Jonathan Bear hug and wishing you a super duper wonderful, fantastic day. Bye, everyone.
Thank you so much, Jonathan.
And